Hello class, this is my first venture into what we call a flipped classroom. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take you through the PowerPoint that I would normally do in class, but this time I'm going to have you guys do this at home. So this week's chapter, we're looking at chapter 27.1, Scramble for Africa. Some of our objectives, we're looking at how does Africa become dominated by Europe, okay? We're going to be looking at why Europe is dominating Africa. And the third thing, we're going to be identifying some groups that are clashing in South Africa, which is a particular country in Africa, obviously in the south. So, after the Industrial Revolution, what ends up happening is a lot of countries, they end up trying to compete with each other. And what ends up happening when these countries are trying to compete is that they all want to get more and more resources and raw materials. This is the start of what we would call is imperialism. So if you think that we've just finished colonialism, colonialism is where other countries are settling in other countries. Imperialism is very similar to this, except this time, imperialism is they're basically going in a country and taking over the economy. They basically just want the raw materials so that their country can sort of produce more in the Industrial Revolution. This is sort of an aftermath of one of our other isms that we've talked about, which is capitalism. And one of the things that happens in capitalism is that other countries start competing. So this is exactly what's happening. So if you see here, we have this map of Africa, and around this map, we see all sorts of different countries competing. We have Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Great Britain, and the last one is Holland, okay? And actually all of these countries actually end up having take over a good part of different parts of Africa. So here we have a picture of Africa. Alright, so part of the reason why Africa was left unexplored by Europe up until this point is there are three major reasons. The first is that Africa actually had an army to defend themselves. The second is that Africa had a lot of disease that would cause many Europeans to die. Hence, why they would not want to go exploring. The third reason is Africa's geography. As we know, Africa has a lot of deserts. Africa also has a lot of jungle. All of these is it's very hard for Europeans to actually explore. But with the coming of Industrial Revolution, we have the technology of the steamboat, which helps Europeans start exploring parts of Africa that they were not able to before. Part of that is the steamboat could actually help navigate through African rivers better than a small boat such as a canoe. So looking at what imperialism is again, imperialism is when you seize a country or territory by a stronger country. Often imperialism is done in more than one way. Now the most obvious way would be imperialism is done to gain more money for that stronger country. As we talked about before, it would be resources. But imperialism is also linked with things like missionaries. Now if you don't know what missionaries are, that has to do with religion. In this case, the European religion at the time would be Christianity. So many times we'd have Christian missionaries would go to Africa to try and convert different African tribes to Christianity. Second thing, we have explorers. Obviously they're exploring the country. Humanitarians, they're the people who are reaching out to African people, trying to help them. All of them start reaching Africa. But what we should be asking right now is, how does this exploration in Africa start? Well, it all starts with one man. His name is Dave Livingstone. Dave Livingstone goes to one area in Africa called the Congo. What he's doing there is he's trying to promote Christianity. But what happens is that Dave Livingstone and the people he go with, they don't come back. This starts to concern people of Belgium. So what ends up happening is they send another person named Henry Stanley out to find him. When Henry Stanley finds this Dave Livingstone, he is on the river called, and I'm going to make this a horrible pronunciation, Tanganyika in Congo, right here. And what ends up happening is when Henry Stanley finds him, first of all, he's alive, and second of all, he is actually living there. From this point, what Henry Stanley does is he ends up going to start exploring this river in the area of Congo. King Leopold II of Belgium gets very curious about what Stanley's doing. And so what he does is Stanley ends up actually going to small towns where tribe leaders are in Africa. And he starts saying, hey, you should sign over the rights of your land to Belgium. Sadly, what ends up happening is that this works. And King Leopold II, he claims that he's in the Congo to spread Christianity and to free people from slavery. What actually ends up happening is he will make more money if he exploits these Africans. And that's exactly what King Leopold II does. So after Stanley gets all these African tribes to sign over their land to acquire land, Leopold turns around and uses those Africans as basically slaves to try and get more resources for Belgium. What is very interesting about this is that Belgium itself is quite a small country. And what ends up happening is that the Congo is significantly larger than Belgium itself. This is what starts a lot of European countries wanting to explore Africa. The fact that there's land to be had, and on that land there are a lot of resources and a lot of people whom you can exploit. Now what the bigger question is how is it that all of Europe can go into a whole continent and believe that they can take over and treat the people as if they're below them? Well, this is deeply rooted in European society. First of all, we have a European superiority. Now, what superiority means is basically Europe thinks they are better than everyone else. They are superior. So what ends up happening is, because Europe has the power at the time, because Europe has the technology during the Industrial Revolution, they start to gain more racist tendencies. There's always been a belief that if your skin was darker, you are not as human or as good as someone with white skin. This is just exemplified through imperialism. First of all, because there's no education implemented in Africa at this time, many of these tribes did not even know what they were doing when they were signing their land over to European countries. The second thing that is sort of driving European superiority is social Darwinism. Social Darwinism. We've talked about social Darwinism before. Social Darwinism is the idea of evolution. It's the idea of survival of the fittest. Basically what Europe believes is that if they are superior, if they can survive, if they can have the power, then they should take it. It is a competition, and those who are at the bottom of the competition deserve to be there. So in this case, the person who is at the bottom of this competition would be African tribes. They were basically dominated by Europe because Europe had advanced advanced their technology, had advanced their warfare, which allowed them to feel like they were above any Africans in Africa. Now, some factors that also promote imperialism in Africa is first technology. One big thing that influences exploration in Africa is the steam engine. We've talked about the steam engine before in the Industrial Revolution. Well, here we are talking about it again. The steam engine was able to help people navigate the rivers in Africa that were quite difficult to navigate. The second thing is that we have the more development of guns. Okay, so Europeans, they have better weapons. One negative effect of Europeans colonizing is that they were still susceptible to disease. And one disease that affected many Europeans who were exploring Africa was malaria. Malaria is when you get bitten by mosquitoes with a certain disease in it. Now, what this made Europeans do is basically Europeans, when they colonized Africa, they were sticking to the coast. Because the coast, it was easy for them to sort of make their escape to Europe if they were sick. The last reason why Africa was quite easy to colonize was the diversity in Africa. Now, it's easy to think of Africa as sort of just general people of darker skin. But the fact of the matter is, Africa was full of thousands of different languages and full of different cultures. Every tribe in Africa had a different language and a different culture. And what this would mean is that it was very easy for Europeans to come in and basically say one thing to one tribe, say another thing to another tribe, and those tribes are never communicating with each other. So that would make it easy for Europeans to take over. So now the race had begun. Europeans, from every different country in Europe, were getting ready to claim land in Africa. The reason why is that Africa, more French had found gold and diamonds in parts of Africa, which again sparked more Europeans to want to get a piece of the continent. So, in 1884 to 1885, we have an event. It's called the Berlin Conference. 14 nations meet together in, obviously, Berlin, which is Germany, and basically they go over specific rules on how to divide Africa as a continent. The first rule was that they must notify everyone that they have claimed land. The second was that the country had to prove that they could control the land that they claimed. No African tribe leader was invited. No African was present. You can get a picture of this idea of racism and imperialism by looking at this conference. The last thing that we're going to look at is the fact that after this Berlin Conference, Africa becomes completely controlled by Europe. The only two places that are left untouched are Liberia and Ethiopia. Everything else is claimed. Basically, raw materials are exported from Africa to Europe. What Europe thought would be happening is that Africans would end up buying a lot of the materials back from Europe. But this did not happen. The reason they thought this is because in the New World, in America, this is exactly what happened. People would export raw goods, buy them back from Europe, hence making a lot of money. This did not happen in Africa. The last thing that starts to develop in Africa is cash crop plantations. Cash crop plantations is when they have a whole farm dedicated to one crop, and that sole purpose is to make money. Now, I'm not going to talk about South Africa on this video. We're going to talk more about South Africa in class. So please continue to read and make sure you're taking your notes. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.